Hi, welcome back to La Belle Vie. So today I have some more Dan Markel content, and specifically this relates to next Monday, October 9th, 3-hour hearing that the court has ordered to address all pending motions. Now, we know that there's been a flurry of activity in the last week or so. The state has filed motions and the defense has filed motions. Now, today I'm going to go over the state's amended motion in limine with respect to wiretaps. Now, a lot of the calls that are in this motion in limine were part of the video that I just did recently, Trial Countdown Part 4, where I went over Special Agent Patrick Sanford's testimony. So I'll link that above here in case you haven't checked that out yet. Now, with respect to the motion in limine, what the state is trying to do is get a ruling by the court with respect to these various wiretaps so that they understand when they get to trial in just a few weeks what they're going to be able to use. So it's a common motion, and again, it'll be one of those motions that we'll hear on Monday. Now, with respect to the standards, first the state has to show that the wiretap specifically, each one are relevant. That's a threshold matter that the state has to show. But then also, because these wiretaps are statements that were made out of court, they're not made as part of trial testimony, the likely objection will be that they are hearsay, basically an out-of-court statement. And in order for the state to be able, or the defense, to be able to get in an out-of-court statement at trial, they have to be able to show that it's not hearsay or that it's subject to an exclusion to the hearsay rule. So as I go through each of the wiretaps, first I want to identify them for you because in the second part of the motion, we see a lot of new calls that we haven't seen before. Now, hint, some of them might be on Fancy Fiction's channel. I'll link her channel below, but some of them I can't find. So super interesting. We'll go through all of that. And then to the extent I have a comment on the argument that the state has already made as to why these wiretaps need to come in, I'll give my commentary on that. So you'll see here, this is the amended motion in limine. It was filed on October 2nd. And here we go in. So I went ahead and made some notes. Now, again, like I said, the first set of calls, most of them we've seen before in the other two trials. I'm going to insert my Google Calendar here so you can get a picture of these first set of calls. These first set of calls all occurred on April 19th, or what I would call, the bump day. And so here we see 3 calls from between Charlie and Donna. The first call that Donna made at 2:09 to Charlie, and then we've got the subsequent calls that Charlie made back to Donna before he ultimately talks to Katie later that afternoon. Now, the state has said that these are statements as an admission of a party opponent. That's a really strong argument, frankly, for a lot of these calls. When you've got Charlie talking, that is a party opponent. The party is a party, so Charlie's a party, and he's an opponent to the state. So under that specific exclusion of the hearsay rule, you're able to get in statements that the other party made as an exception to the hearsay rule. So you'll see as we go through this that is a justification for a lot of these calls. So here we've got the statement of a party opponent, and that Donna Adelson's statements are necessary to add context, to give context so we understand the whole picture of what Charlie here, the defendant, is saying. Okay, so here's all of the arguments for that. Then again, here, not a surprise, we've got the next call that Charlie made at 4:27 to Katie, telling her that his mom got a letter and basically talking in code, but saying, hey, are you available tomorrow to meet? And she says yes. Then we've got 4:20. And I'm going to insert the calendar here so we can see what happened on 420. 420 is what I called in my trial countdown part 4 as the Dolce Vita day. This is the day after the bump when Charlie goes down to Miami, meets with his mother. You know, they meet in the marina next to the Monty's restaurant. And then subsequently, Charlie makes his way back up north and meets with Katie. So here, this call, I believe, is probably going to be the 314 call where Charlie talks to Katie and says, hey, I'm here. I'm in the shopping plaza. Come on out and meet me. And of course, they then subsequently go into the Dolce Vita restaurant and have that Dolce Vita recording that we all know and love. Now, these calls here, I believe these are the two calls that Charlie and Donna have after the Dolce meeting ended with Katie. You'll see I hit again here 420. We've got the first call that Charlie makes to Donna at 4:56 p.m. And if you recall, Donna had to call Charlie back because she was at a tennis lessons with Dan Markel's children. And she called back around 5:10ish and they continued to have their conversation. And again, admission of a party opponent. And I think that, again, is going to be the strong argument for a lot of these calls. It's going to be hard for Charlie's defense to avoid getting these admissions in my opinion. Okay, so we've got the next day, which is April 21. So I'll go ahead again and insert a calendar day for that. This is the Matsuri day. So you'll recall that Charlie and Katie talked that morning. There was a lot of code talk in that conversation. Again, I went over it in my Patrick Sanford video. And then later that evening is when Charlie meets with Harvey around 8 p.m. at the Matsuri restaurant. And that's when, among other things, Harvey says, so is that what you agreed with Katie? Now, this next set of calls are on April 25th. And this is the day that Donna and Harvey received that bump 2, that letter that the FBI sent to the Adelson's home to basically kind of spur on further conversation, you know, that the number, the undercover, hadn't heard from them. And that ultimately leads to Charlie and Katie meeting down in South Beach at the Icon. And then they again also went to the marina near Monty's. And if you recall, there was 2 calls, one at 7:04, as I indicate here, and then one at 7:33. And you'll recall that in the first call, Katie mentions to Charlie, hey, can you get my calls on WhatsApp? So again, we're seeing some signaling that communications are likely happening that are not part of the wiretap. Because again, wiretaps cannot record a WhatsApp or a Wi-Fi internet-based communication. You'd have to get that from the phone itself, or if it was stored in an iCloud. Otherwise, it's encrypted and it won't be subject to the tap. So those were the importance of those calls. Again, nothing new. Now, on April 26th, so basically what was going on was that Katie, for whatever reason, didn't have the number, didn't think she had the number correctly. So there's all these communications between Sigfredo, Katie, Charlie, and Donna about getting the correct number for the undercover. So that's really all that these calls are. But in any event, you know, again, it shows this pattern of communications between the parties. Okay, so I'll insert the calendar really quick for April 27th. This day, not a lot happened, as you can see. There was this call between Donna and Charlie that occurred at 12:25 p.m. And the primary importance of this call was, again, to confirm they were talking about the bump letter. And so, again, it's to kind of show, again, this continual conversation of this bump operation and the blackmail scheme. But then we get to 4/28, and I went over April 28th. This was a big day, and this was a big part of my Patrick Sanford video. This is the day of bump 3. If you recall, this is the day. I'm actually going to insert the calendar now. This was the day that the undercover called the Adelson Institute and talked with Erica Johnson, mentioned, he was trying to reach Donna and then he had left some paperwork, and it was very important for Donna to call him back about the important paperwork. And of course, this wound up spurring calls, as we see here. Charlie and Donna talk. She kind of lets him know about this conversation that this person, the undercover, called the Adelson Institute. Then we've got Charlie trying to get in touch with Katie. Then Katie finally talks to him at 10:43 a.m. They talk in code and they're trying to talk about what to do about the situation. Then Charlie actually calls the undercover at 11:33 after he's talked to Katie a couple times. Then after Charlie talks to the undercover, he speaks with Katie at 12:41. And he basically relays in code basically what was said at his conversation with the undercover. Then Katie calls Sigfredo and they have that very interesting call where, as I mentioned in the Patrick Sanford video, it's very clear that Katie is starting to freak out. And in fact, it even gets the attention of Sigfredo because they continue to use the names Katie and Tuto. Then we've got, again, a call at 4:58 where Charlie calls Charlie calls Katie back to kind of see what she was able to figure out, presumably. And of course, at the end of the evening, Sigfredo texts Katie and says he tried 3 additional times to get the undercover, which was a lie. And then, of course, then Katie calls Charlie and repeats the lie, acts like she was the one that called, but she didn't. It's all just a bunch of lies. So anyway, all this is not new. This was, again, in the other 2 trials, plus I had it in the Patrick Sanford video. What is new, we're starting to get to calls that I don't know what these calls are. Just from the context, again, assuming that the state goes in chronological order of the calls, which they generally did in the past, generally speaking. My guess is that this call here, this new call, must have happened between 4:28 and 4:29, because I'm pretty sure that I know about this 4:29 call here. So this call basically is, it looks like it's with Donna and Charlie. Maybe this was where he called Donna to reassure her again that, remember he had talked to Katie the evening before and she had said this lie that she had tried to call the undercover 3 additional times. Perhaps that's Charlie relaying that information to Donna in code. This call here, I did talk about in my other video with Pat Sanford. This is a call that happened on April 29th, the day after all the flurry of calls when Charlie calls the undercover. And basically in this call at 8:45, they again talk in code. This is where Katie, tells Charlie that she's going to take care of things. And they also start talking about things about somebody not from the first layer, but probably the second layer. That actual quote is in that April 29th call. So that's why I'm pretty confident that this is the 429. First call that I can't figure out. It looks like we've got 3 new calls between Charlie and Katie. And again, their admission of a party opponent and Katie's statements would provide context. I mean, my assumption is they're still trying to figure out, do they continue to contact the undercover? Okay, so the next call is on May 4th. I think, this is my investigative skills, I think this call here happened on 5/4. Now, 5/4 is an important day because at 2:00 in the morning on 5/4, Donna gets a text from the undercover and it scares her. Okay, it comes at 2:00 in the morning. I mean, I would probably be scared to get a text at 2:00 in the morning as well. So this call on May 4th, If you go to Fancy Fiction's channel, she has it there in the wiretap. It's a call between Charlie and Donna. And they're talking in code and they're talking about other things, but it's about the 11-minute mark that Charlie kind of finally comes in and says, "Hey, how's everything going?" And I've noticed when you listen to these wiretaps that usually is kind of how Katie does it too, like where they start saying, "Hey, so how's everything going?" I found that when they start talking in that, like after they've had their small talk or their stories, that's when you start getting some of the information. So at around the 11-minute mark, Donna tells Charlie that things aren't great. And in fact, in this call, they wind up agreeing to meet the next day in person. I believe that Donna and Harvey were going to drive up to see Charlie. So in my opinion, I think that this call here is that call on 5-4 where basically she tells Donna tells Charlie things aren't great, and they agree to meet the next day. Now, the next day would be May 5th. These are also new calls, and they're calls between Charlie and Katie and Charlie and Donna. Now, and they're admission of a party opponent, and again, you also need them for context. Now, on May 5th, there's actually 3 calls that Fancy has on her channel. There's 2 with Katie and 1 with Donna. So the 2 with Katie, one is called It's One of Two Scenarios. And in that call, Charlie tells Donna about getting a text at 2:00 in the morning. And he tells her that in the text, it included references to Puta and Katie's baby daddy. Both Katie and Charlie remarked they thought there was too much detail. But then Katie goes back to her story. "Well, I'm just trying to help your family out, you know." And then Charlie goes back to his story. "Well, I'm going to feel really stupid if this isn't the right Katie." And in this conversation too, Charlie's hemming and hawing. He's saying like, "Harvey wants to go to the FBI. My mom doesn't know." And at one point he says, "Yeah, they should just go to the cops." But then at one point he says, "Well, maybe not, because they're just gonna, if they go to jail, they're just gonna sit there and stew and come after me when they get out." So another lovely tidbit from this call was that Charlie mentions his ex-brother-in-law. And he says how his ex-brother-in-law had death threats against him. And he says, and the next thing you know, he gets killed. That pissed me off. So it could be that one. It could also be the second call that Charlie and Katie had that day that's on Fancy's channel. And that's what she calls the bump talk. And again, they talk about this text and the puta, the baby daddy, all that. Katie is like so helpful in this call. She's like, "Well, Charlie, you should have had your mom text back in the morning. I mean, even if it wasn't right away, she should have just texted back. I mean, who's calling? Why are you calling? Why are you texting me? You have the wrong number." I don't know which one of those 2 calls it is, but they both reference the text. So I think they're both helpful to show code talk, etc. And then the call with Donna, that one is called on Fancy's channel, "Gonna Call Back Sammy." And this call, really where it kind of gets interesting is towards the end of a call. It appears that they are discussing Donna calling the undercover back. And, you know, possibly that evening, but then Charlie says, "No, you call back when you're comfortable, but you should be firm in what you say." So those are the calls on 5-5. Now, it is also important to know that on May 6th, Donna actually calls the undercover. Apparently she calls him, then he calls her back, and then she calls him back. So she ultimately does talk with the undercover on May 6th. So that is why I think this call is after, it's either that same day on May 6th or there, after, because it's a call between Katie and Sigfredo relaying information that Katie learned from Charlie about Donna Adelson calling the undercover. Now, what I don't know is when Katie learned from Charlie about Donna calling the undercover. And I don't know if they did that via WhatsApp or if they met in person. But again, because we know that the call Donna made to the undercover was on 5/6, that's got to mean this call here is either on 5/6 or thereafter. Now, the next call I thought might be, I might be able to figure out, was this call on 5/16, and it's between Charlie and Katie. And I was thinking, maybe this is it, just kind of based on where we are in the timeline. But honestly, it could be somewhere down here too. But I do think that this 5/16 call might be one that the state wants to introduce. On Fancy's channel, it's called Weed plus Cancer plus Car Trouble. I mean, in addition to like just the whole grifting with Katie and her car repairs, towards the end, Katie asks, "How is everything?" And again, like I mentioned, I've heard enough of these wiretaps that it almost seems like that's a trigger of "how is everything" is when I start perking up my ears, like, okay, what are they saying? And Charlie says everything's fine with the office. Remember, they like to use code allegedly with the office. That also links in really well with Katie supposedly working for the Adelsons, right? And in fact, Charlie even says no more patients are annoying him. Then Katie says, "Well, can I get a raise?" And Charlie says he's going to look into the budget. God, the grift never ends. But he thanks her. This was interesting, but he thanks her for going up there this weekend and straightening it up. So did Katie tell him maybe when they met in person? I don't know. This is just speculation. But did Katie tell him that they were going to go visit Tato in jail? Because remember, Tato is in jail at this point. So I don't know. I thought that might be interesting. And then, of course, Katie ends the call. "My job never ends." Oh, you're such a hard worker, Katie. Okay, these next calls, guys, I don't know. There's apparently a text between Katie and Sig. Again, just showing the flow of information between Charlie and Sigfredo, and of course, Katie being the middle woman. Now, this call, it said it was previously disclosed. I don't think this call was ever actually played in open court. I couldn't find it. If anyone else can think of what this might be from one of the other two trials, let me know. Now, these are new calls. They're between Charlie and Katie and Charlie and Donna. So I'm assuming, again, maybe this was them talking about, do they need to do anything more? Because presumably they haven't heard anything more from the undercover, at least as far as we know. Here's a call that again was previously disclosed. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it's between Charlie and Katie as an admission of a party opponent. Okay, and then here, the rest, a bunch of these are new calls. Again, I'm not going to go through them all, but it looks like there's calls between Charlie and Donna, calls between Charlie and Katie, calls between Charlie and Katie, texts between Katie and Garcia. Now this one, it says, "Call me if you can step out of the office for a second." I was wondering if that might have been on April 24th. We know that's the day that Patrick Sanford went to Sigfredo's work and they spoke with him and interviewed him. Of course, he wasn't, being very helpful. So I was wondering if this was maybe, when Katie was also freaking out at the same time at her house. We knew that Kevin Isom was there with, I think, another FBI agent trying to talk with her as well. So I don't know. That was the only thing I was thinking about there with this text. Here is a new call between Sigfredo and Katie. Like the arguments made above, the communication are statements to show their state of mind while they discuss the blackmailing ruse. It also proves prior acts taken to track down the source of the blackmail. I'm wondering if this was potentially a call that Katie and Sigfredo had after the FBI left his office, possibly because it's close to this. I don't know. Then we've got a new call between Charlie and Donna. And then another call between Charlie and Katie. Now, the only thing with this is that my thinking is it's got to be before May 25th, because May 25th is when Sigfredo was arrested. So it's either, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would think this has got to be the 24th or early on the 25th before Sig was arrested. I believe he was arrested later in the afternoon, early evening. So yeah. But anyway, that's why I put the green line there. Sigfredo was arrested. And then we have one last call between Charlie and Donna. And again, admission of a party opponent. Again, as mentioned, I'm not quite sure what some of these wiretaps might be. I'm wondering if maybe they might be new wiretaps that no one's heard before. That would be super interesting, right? There are a couple calls that I thought might be some of these that I haven't mentioned that are on Fancy's channel. One was on May 23rd. It's between Katie and Charlie. It's called something like Boats, Handouts, and Life Stuff. This call was interesting because first, Katie's talking about her 2 bum cars, and she needs a car that's in good enough condition to tow a boat because apparently they're in the market for a boat. And Charlie says, he starts talking to her about the type of boat she should get. And he says, let me know about the boat. I'll help you out. He also said about the car repairs, he'll take care of Sully bills. So again, showing benefits conferred upon Katie from Charlie as alleged to be part of the murder for hire plot. She then asks in the conversation if everything's good. And he says, everything is really good, actually. Patients have been good in the office. Code talk. No more complaints from anybody. And Katie says, well, I do my part of the job. One day you'll need to give me a raise. Grifty, grifty. He again mentions being up there on Saturday and cleaning the whole place up so no one's going to complain on Monday. Again, I think that's potentially reference to perhaps maybe Katie told Charlie they were going to talk to somebody in person. I don't know. But she ends that call real classy. Employee of the month, effer. There are a couple of other possibilities that I think might be that last call with Donna. There was a call on April 27th, again, would be after Sigfredo's arrested, and Donna asks Charlie if they can come up and have lunch with him the next day. She also mentioned that Wendy's judge has some information on the judge up in Tallahassee. That's interesting. There was also a call on April 30 on Fancy's channel where Donna calls Charlie, where she took a pill for her, quote, TMJ, and she had a little wine. I don't know, maybe to show she's not living a very calm life. She's nervous and stressed. I don't think that would be the call either. So, maybe it's the call on 5/27. Maybe it's something completely we don't know about. What do you guys think? Heading into the trial for this month, I am going to link at the end of the video my playlist, so you can go back and check out my trial countdowns and some of my other Markel content. And in the meantime, if you haven't subscribed, if you would consider subscribing, I would really appreciate it. And for my returning subscribers, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And I hope to see you in my next video.